Aisha Malhotra and Rajiv Sharma stood beneath golden lights in a Toronto ballroom worth $2 million, smiling as cameras flashed and guests applauded what looked like the wedding of a year. She was the heiress to a powerful real estate empire. He was the charming tech investor who claimed to conquer global markets. Within hours of their vows, the groom would vanish with a fortune. The bride would be fighting for her life in a hospital bed, and the man who planned it all would be found dead under mysterious circumstances. What began as a fairy tale celebration would unravel into an international scam, a poisoning, and a killing that remains unsolved to this day. Toronto's elite social circle had been waiting months for this wedding. The Malhotra family was known across Ontario for their luxury properties, high-end developments, and charitable foundations. When news spread that their only daughter, Aisha Malhotra, was marrying a successful entrepreneur from India, the event instantly became the most talked-about celebration of the year. Rajiv Sharma entered their lives like a dream. He presented himself as a polished tech investor expanding into the Canadian market. His social media displayed photographs of business conferences in Dubai, Singapore, and London. He spoke confidently about artificial intelligence startups and global partnerships. To Aisha's family, he seemed ambitious, educated, and perfectly suited for their daughter. The wedding venue was one of Toronto's most expensive luxury hotels. The ballroom was transformed into a golden palace, filled with imported flowers flown in from Europe. Crystal chandeliers reflected off-mirrored stages. Guests arrived in designer outfits, stepping out of luxury cars lined along the entrance. Professional videographers captured every angle while drones filmed the grand arrival from above. The catering included dishes from 5 different countries, and a famous Bollywood singer performed live during the reception. Estimates later placed the total cost near $2 million. Aisha looked radiant in a custom-made bridal lehenga embroidered with real gold thread. Rajiv stood beside her in an ivory sherwani, smiling confidently as cameras flashed. To the public, they appeared deeply in love. Their families embraced, investors mingled, and social media feeds filled with admiration. Yet beneath the glamour, small warning signs quietly existed. Rajiv had kept much of his business paperwork private, claiming sensitive international deals. He discouraged background checks, saying trust was the foundation of marriage. Few questioned him. The celebration was too grand, too joyful. The celebration had ended just after midnight, and exhaustion slowly replaced excitement. Guests returned home carrying gift boxes and memories of the extravagant night. Aisha and Rajiv were escorted to the presidential suite by hotel staff trained to handle high-profile clients. Security footage later showed them walking down the hallway, surrounded briefly by family members before the door closed behind them. Inside the suite were wedding gifts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Gold jewelry sets, diamond necklaces, luxury watches, and thick envelopes filled with cash had been placed carefully in decorative trunks. The Malhotra family had also arranged a private safe in the room for added protection. Everything appeared secure. At 7:30 the next morning, hotel staff noticed something unusual. Rajiv had not requested the scheduled breakfast service. His phone went straight to voicemail. When Aisha's mother tried calling her daughter, there was no answer. A sense of unease began to grow. Shortly after 9 a.m., housekeeping knocked on the suite door. There was no response. Management used a master key to enter. The room looked disturbed. Suitcases were open. The decorative trunks had been emptied. The safe doors stood wide open. Jewelry cases lay scattered across the floor. In the bathroom, Aisha was found collapsed beside the marble sink. She was breathing but barely conscious. An ambulance arrived within minutes. Doctors later confirmed she had been poisoned with a fast-acting substance mixed into a drink. Rajiv was nowhere in the building. Security footage revealed him leaving through a side service exit at 3:12 a.m., carrying a black duffel bag. He walked calmly, avoiding the main lobby cameras. A taxi picked him up 2 blocks away. Within hours, what had been Canada's most glamorous wedding became an active criminal investigation. The investigation moved quickly once police realized the groom's identity might be false. Officers began by examining Rajiv's passport, visa documents, and financial records. At first glance, everything appeared legitimate. The passport was authentic, and the visa had been approved through proper channels. But when detectives contacted the companies Rajiv claimed to own, the story began to fall apart. The tech firm listed on his business profile did not exist in any official Canadian or Indian registry. The office address in Mumbai led to a shared workspace that had no record of his name. The phone numbers provided on his website were recently activated prepaid lines. Even the professional photographs displayed online were traced back to stock image databases. Investigators then reviewed his financial activity. They discovered that weeks before the wedding, Rajiv had persuaded Aisha to open a joint account for future investments. Nearly $1.2 million had been transferred into that account by the Malhotra family as part of wedding arrangements and planned business expansion. Just hours before the ceremony, the entire amount was quietly moved to an offshore account registered in the Caribbean. Further digging uncovered an even darker pattern. Through international cooperation, authorities found records of 2 previous marriages under different names in the United Kingdom and Singapore. In both cases, wealthy families reported large financial losses shortly after the weddings. Complaints had been filed, but the suspect disappeared before charges could be finalized. This was not an impulsive crime. It was a carefully designed scheme built on charm, false prestige, and strategic timing. Rajiv had studied his victims, gained their trust, and positioned himself close to their wealth before striking. But despite the precision of his plan, something unexpected had happened in Toronto, and it would soon change the direction of the entire case. 2 days after the poisoning, the manhunt took a shocking turn. Rajiv's body was discovered inside a short-term rental apartment in downtown Toronto. The unit had been booked under another false identity using stolen credit card details. A cleaning staff member found the door slightly open and alerted building security, who then contacted police. Inside, the apartment showed signs of chaos. A laptop lay shattered against a wall. Several documents were half-burned in the kitchen sink. A suitcase sat open on the bed, but it was nearly empty. The black duffel bag seen in the hotel footage was nowhere to be found. Rajiv had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the chest. At first, authorities considered the possibility of suicide, especially given the intense pressure of the investigation. However, forensic analysis quickly challenged that theory. The angle of the bullet trajectory did not align with a self-inflicted shot. Gunshot residue was minimal on his hands. The weapon, found near his body, carried only partial smudge prints that could not be clearly identified. Surveillance footage from the apartment building revealed a hooded figure entering late the previous night. The individual avoided direct camera angles and exited through an underground parking garage approximately 30 minutes later. The face remained hidden, and the vehicle's license plate could not be fully captured. Detectives now faced a new mystery. Had Rajiv been betrayed by an accomplice? Had someone else followed him after discovering the scam? Or had one of his past victims tracked him down? Financial records showed no immediate movement of the stolen funds after his death. The offshore account remained untouched. The man who orchestrated a multi-million-dollar deception had become the victim of a deadly crime himself, and the person responsible had vanished without leaving a clear trace. As investigators continued to untangle the case, new layers of deception began to surface. Rajiv's real identity was eventually confirmed through biometric records shared by international agencies. His actual name was different from the one used in Canada, and his history stretched across several countries. He had built an elaborate network of fake profiles, shell companies, and temporary addresses that allowed him to disappear whenever suspicion grew too strong. Financial analysts traced part of the stolen $1.2 million to a series of quick transfers made shortly before his death. The money had been split into smaller amounts and moved through cryptocurrency exchanges, making recovery nearly impossible. Whoever had access to his accounts after the wedding clearly understood how to hide digital trails. Authorities then focused on the private investigator from Vancouver who had been hired weeks earlier to examine the Malhotra family's assets. Phone records showed several calls between him and Rajiv in the days leading up to the wedding. The investigator admitted he had been paid to gather detailed information about properties, trusts, and offshore holdings. He insisted he believed it was part of a legitimate business partnership. No direct evidence linked him to the shooting, but suspicion lingered. Another unexpected lead emerged when immigration data confirmed that one of Rajiv's former victims had entered Canada days before the ceremony. She had previously accused him of fraud after losing her savings in a similar marriage scheme. Although her presence raised serious questions, surveillance footage and financial records failed to connect her directly to the apartment where Rajiv was killed. In the end, prosecutors closed the homicide investigation without identifying a suspect. The poisoning attempt, however, remained officially tied to Rajiv's actions. Aisha survived and slowly rebuilt her life, though the public attention never fully faded. In the months that followed, the story refused to disappear from public attention. National news outlets dissected every detail of the lavish ceremony, the poisoning, the vanished fortune, and the mysterious killing. What began as a glamorous celebration had transformed into a warning shared across communities in both Canada and India. Trust, status, and wealth had created the perfect cover for deception. Authorities reopened portions of the financial investigation after discovering encrypted files recovered from Rajiv's damaged laptop. Digital forensic experts managed to restore fragments of spreadsheets containing coded entries. The data suggested he had been tracking potential targets for years. Wealth estimates, family backgrounds, and social connections were listed beside each name. Aisha's profile had been marked as confirmed weeks before he proposed marriage. Even more disturbing was a separate folder labeled with dates extending into the future. It appeared Rajiv had no intention of stopping. Canada may have been only one step in a longer international operation. Meanwhile, the source of the poison used on Aisha was traced to an illegal online marketplace. Payment for the substance had been made through anonymous cryptocurrency days before the wedding. Investigators could not determine whether Rajiv personally ordered it or if someone else had gained access to his accounts. Rumors continued to circulate about the hooded figure seen entering the apartment building. Some believed it was a former victim seeking justice. Others suspected a hidden partner eliminating a liability. A small group even theorized that powerful financial interests had intervened to protect their reputations. Despite extensive effort, none of these possibilities produced concrete proof. The stolen millions remained scattered through digital channels beyond recovery. The shooter remained unidentified, and the case file, thick with evidence yet lacking closure. Years passed, but the case never truly faded. It became a subject studied in financial crime seminars and law enforcement training programs across Canada. Experts examined how Rajiv had manipulated cultural expectations, luxury branding, and social pressure to avoid scrutiny. The wedding had been so grand that few people felt comfortable questioning anything. Prestige had acted as protection. Aisha chose to stay away from interviews, focusing instead on quiet recovery. The poisoning left lasting physical effects, and the emotional impact was even deeper. Trusted advisors reviewed every financial structure connected to her family's businesses. New security protocols were introduced, and background investigations became mandatory for all major partnerships. The Malhotra family turned their painful experience into advocacy, supporting fraud awareness campaigns within immigrant communities. Behind closed doors, detectives occasionally revisited the unsolved homicide. Advances in forensic science allowed them to re-examine fingerprints and surveillance footage. The partial prints on the weapon still failed to match any database. The hooded figure's body shape and walking pattern were analyzed repeatedly, yet no definitive identification emerged. One small detail continued to trouble investigators. Hours before Rajiv's death, a brief signal from his phone connected to a nearby cell tower, suggesting he had met someone willingly. It did not appear to be a forced encounter. That final meeting remained a blank space in the timeline. Some believed Rajiv had arranged to divide the stolen funds with a hidden partner who later turned against him. Others suspected that someone he had deceived decided to end the cycle permanently. The truth remains locked in that apartment on a cold Toronto night. What is certain is that a man who built his life on lies ultimately became trapped by them. The extravagant wedding that once symbolized success now stands as a reminder. Nearly a decade later, the case still appears in documentaries, podcasts, and academic discussions about international fraud. What makes it unforgettable is not only the scale of the wedding or the money involved, but the precision of the deception. Rajiv had studied human behavior as carefully as he studied financial systems. He understood pride, reputation, and the desire for social recognition. By presenting himself as successful and worldly, he made doubt seem almost disrespectful. Investigators eventually confirmed that at least 4 families across 3 countries had suffered major financial losses linked to his schemes. Some victims never reported the crimes publicly, choosing silence over humiliation. The pattern showed patience and discipline. Rajiv would spend months building trust before moving forward. Engagement came only after thorough research. Marriage followed quickly, leaving little time for independent verification. Despite years of effort, the identity of the person who killed him remains unknown. Advances in technology have not produced new answers. The offshore accounts where most of the money was transferred still show no significant activity. If someone accessed those funds, they did so carefully enough to avoid detection. Aisha rebuilt her life away from headlines. She became involved in financial literacy programs, quietly helping others recognize red flags in high-value relationships and investments. Though she rarely speaks about the night of her wedding, those close to her say it changed her understanding of trust forever. The final chapter of this story offers no courtroom resolution and no public confession. It leaves only lessons. Wealth can attract manipulation. Appearances can conceal planning. And sometimes justice arrives in ways that remain hidden from official records. A celebration meant to unite 2 lives instead exposed an international scam and ended with a death that still echoes as an unanswered question.